But basically, I'm going to talk about just how interactive stories will change the world, and it's the only way to tell stories nowadays, in my eyes. So it started out when I was a kid. I wanted to make movies. I think a lot of people wanted to, and a lot of people still do. There I am with this old-fashioned film camera and some cool shades. Yeah, it's a good picture.
Priceless.
Yeah. And I think I did a pretty decent job of this for the first 10 years of my career. There I am with will.i.am shooting some stuff, and these are some folks that I've interviewed, Steve Wozniak, Mark Leno, I met Werner Herzog at an event. And, I've screened films in different theaters, and I've always thought, okay, this is going to be my in. I'm going to make movies, I'm going to make feature films. And then I started to realize about a year ago that movies are starting to decline. The first film that I put out, we did it at this theater in San Francisco called the Red Vic. Within a year, that theater closed down. I was like, oh, I guess no one's going to remember our premiere there. We premiered the film after that at the Castro Theater, so I saw, okay, I'm getting better at doing, movies, but distribution, there's a huge issue going on there where there's so much media out in the world, and especially now Snapchat, everyone is making their own movies. So how do you watch all of that? How do you draw people into that? And then I started to learn a little bit about interactive. And I started out with this camera, just the simple Theta S. Actually, I started with the one before this, the M15. And this camera is great because it's an introduction to this medium for anyone. You can knock the camera down and it doesn't really break. So it's a good experimental camera. But what I kind of learned from doing this is that people wanted more. I kept noticing the same sort of comments that people were like, why is the quality, not as good? The videos are awesome, but I want to be able to see it in crystal clear. So I kind of moved up to this other camera, the Kodak Pix Pro here. And this is great because it shoots 4K resolution, but it doesn't stitch it quite as well as the other camera. So I started to notice, all right, the technology is still sort of getting there in terms of the medium, but for me, I started to notice a huge difference in the viewership started to go up quite a bit once the quality got a lot better. And I think it's just because you're getting more information. And that's what it comes down to. When you're telling a movie that's just a square like that, you're refined to just the information that you can see. When you're telling an interactive story where you can actually look around and see the setting and see how that space reflects the character and what the story happens to be, I think it tells so much more, and it's going to be the next thing. So from that camera, I was like, all right, how can I make this better, right? How can I make the stitch better? I moved up to this camera, the 7 GoPro. What I realized here is I sort of took a misstep. I thought, all right, this camera is going to be so easy, right? It's going to look so much better. It took way more time. And for someone who's trying to do daily content that is journalistic in nature, it's not the way to go. Because there's just, you have 7 different cameras, that means there's 7 different issues if something goes wrong. You want to know the price difference between these cameras?
Yes.
This one's about $1,000. That one, each of the GoPros costs $500. So I started to notice, wow, the technology is just going crazy cheap on these cameras, and they're getting better and better. And sure enough, at this year's NAV, there's even more cameras out there. I highly recommend people look into the SpearCam 2, which is only like $2,500, but can do the same things that Facebook's $60,000 camera can do. So that's where I think it's going, is these smaller cameras. Because in addition, when you have a bigger rig, let's say you got the Nokia Ozo, which is like a massive basketball-sized one, all of a sudden you have to erase this giant basketball as opposed to erasing, say, a tennis ball or a golf ball size tripod. My first client that I really worked with is this animal shelter, Cat Town Cafe in Oakland. And I think it's a great example for why VR is the medium. So basically, these cats, before they opened this location, people worked at the SPCA, one of the founders, and she found that these cats were caged. And people would go in there and see the cats on pretty much the worst day of their life. They're depressed, they're just like not friendly. And people wouldn't adopt these cats. And so she had an idea, along with her friend, that they were going to change this by making a cat-friendly place. So you can see up here there's like a little building they can go in, and there's all this fun stuff. They get lots of volunteers that come in there. And all of a sudden they lower their euthanasia rate in Oakland from 40% to 7%.
Wow.
They saved a ton of cats just by changing the setting and the location. So I said, oh, this is a perfect thing for VR where you can actually see the setting and location. And of course, it's amazing when you have an animal come right up to the camera and interact, because it's like it's looking into your soul. And you can see the guy having fun with it too there. It's really emotional stuff, and when you're actually there and they're looking at you almost like into your soul, breaking that fourth dimension, it takes you to a completely different place that movies just can't. And to bring it back to what I initially did, whenever I would film something, I would usually do it from multiple angles anyway. So what is that really capturing? It's capturing more of the location, more of the space. And so I said, okay, why would I ever do that when I could just set up one and make it even better? And so that's sort of where my thinking has gone with it. And here's one of the other ones that we shot with all these corgis in Long Beach. And it's like you just can't get this type of a shot if you were doing it normal. You wouldn't get a scope of just how many corgis there are. So I sort of said at this point, once I started shooting these things daily, I was like, this is totally the new medium. It's going to be what everyone transitions to. And any argument that people have, well, I don't like it because I like to control what the people are looking at. I say, well, you can still do that. You just move the camera to somewhere else. If you want it to be a close-up, you put it really close to your subject. If you want it to be more of a wide shot, you move the camera and put it a little bit further back. You still have those options of the different lengths, but what you got to realize is what you're putting on camera needs to be impactful. It needs to hook people, because otherwise they are going to look away. But if they look away, you could always put text up saying, hey, you're missing the good stuff over there with an arrow. So you can do all these things that make people even want to go back and watch it again, especially with a video like this. If you're only watching the dog with the tutu, you might be missing out with the dog that has sunglasses. So there are things that you need to think about. How can I tell 3 movies in one space?